My name is Nasud Atumhotep Emre Atumariye, and I'm a student teacher of Dr. Malachi Kabelior, aka Pada Babyanun. Our job is to teach you about right knowledge, right wisdom, and right understanding, so you can lead you straight to right, sound right reason, which is Wu-nuwaupu, which is our spiritual science that will go back thousands of years, way before Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, the Greek Roman Empire, and the Babylonian Empire. So what we do is we break down everything under the sun and above. You feel what I'm saying? So any questions or anything that you need to ask us dealing with our doctrines, it's open floor, so you can ask any question you want. And I'm pretty sure you got studied, right? How long you been reading the books, man?
I just got here.
Okay, first time?
Yes.
Okay, welcome. How about you, my brother? I knew you got some light.
Nah, I just started myself.
Huh?
I just started too as well.
Okay. How about you, my brother?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Where to start?
Huh?
Where to start?
So when do you start?
Where to start
Dealing with what?
in understanding of Nuwaup?
Okay. In ancient times, our ancestors came from the stars and seeded this planet, right? In the Bible, in the Quran, in the Torah, they refer to these beings as Malika or angelic beings. You feel me? That's why in the book of Genesis chapter 6 said, and the sons of God came down and saw the daughters of men to be fair. The question that no one ever asks is like, where did they come down from? Now people say heaven. Okay, that sounds, understandable. You folks say because we're from religious backgrounds. But when you say, well, where's heaven? They say heaven is beyond the furthest star. But the furthest star to us will be the sun, which is only 93 million years away. I mean, not here, 90 miles away, exactly. So the question is, were they residing on another planet? Or what we go by the mythology, how we would talk about the Romans and the Greek, in the clouds. Because when you study Greek mythology and Roman mythology, they talk about Zeus and Jupiter. These supposed to be god of gods. And they sit in a place called Olympus. This is where the word Olympic is from, you hear me?
Yeah.
And they sit and they have temples and stuff like that, right? And structures floating in the clouds. Now, when you read the book of Revelation, chapter 21 and chapter 22, you feel me? It breaks down how the crystal city came down to earth from out of the heavens, you hear me? And they say, I saw a new heaven and a new earth come down, but it's in earth. Are you familiar with that scripture?
Yes.
Exactly, but it's in earth. A new heaven and earth come down, but it's within earth. So no one goes into detail about that. So what happens? Our ancient ancestors came here and seeded the planet billions of years ago. This is where you get the science of evolution from. They say that we evolved out of the waters onto land. You saying? We evolved in the waters for so many million of years, right? That we became from protozoa to amoeba, and then we into a thing called a Dimetrodon. In the ancient Egyptian science that we teach, on the walls of Egypt, they talk about these beings that came out of the water. They were called the Ogdogs, which means 8. And our Nuwaubian language, we say the word Camino, which means 8. You say they talk about the 4 sets of beings, male and female. Amun, Amunet, Heket, Kiket. And what's the other one? Ha and Ha, is it Ha, He, and Kiket. You know what I'm saying? So we talk about these 4 beings that was represented in ancient Egypt as one represented of a serpent and one was represented of a frog, meaning that these beings came from out of the waters and some of them were reptilians. You feel me? So this was talking about how we came about in creation. Now a person that's a religious background said, that's not true, that's mythology. You can't prove that you evolved from water. I can prove that right now as an actual fact. Before you were born, where do you reside at? Water. For how many months? 9 months. They say 9 months, right? You was in water. And what happens when the child's ready to be born? Your water what?
Right.
So what was that child breathing for 9 months? Because it wasn't breathing oxygen, and the biblical word does not serve as lungs. It's for food. Everybody knows this. So when you came out the womb, the first thing the doctor does is take the stuff out of your nose, and then next they push something they do with the baby cough up some type of fluid, and they smack them over the rear, and they start breathing. Air. So previously that means they were breathing inside of They was breathing amniotic fluids for 9 months. Because think about it, before that, he was a tadpole, or you call it sperm cell, swimming to the womb, to the egg, to fertilize it. The same sperm that you see coming from an amphibian called a frog. And they call this a what?
Tadpole.
A tadpole. You hear me? And then you breathe water. So this right there, even in our evolution, dealing with pregnancy for 9 months, when you're evolving, it shows you right there that the prototype or the science of creation is actually being performed to this day when a woman gets pregnant. Y'all understand me? So in Wu-nuwaup, our ancestors planted a seed us here, right? And over years, we were so in tune with nature that this is how you was able to adapt to your environment. Meaning that, do you cook?
No.
Do you know how to cook?
Yes.
Have you ever burnt your hand cooking before?
Yes.
So it means now that you cook, you actually watch certain days you do it. Have you ever cut your hand cutting something over in your lifetime, right? So now it's certain days that you do in the kitchen, now that it's called, precautions of not hurting yourself.
Right.
Because before, when you were learning how to cook and being familiar with the kitchen, you burnt stuff, you burnt yourself, you cut stuff that you weren't supposed to cut, you cut yourself. You messed foods up, and some foods came out good, but it was a trial and what?
Right.
Error. So what happened is, us being naturally grown by the planet Earth naturally, that's why it's called nature of nature. Because the nature of us was an extraterrestrial nature that came here to this planet, of a different nature. So when they planted the seed of us in this planet, over billions of years, we fused in with nature of this planet and became nature of a nature. You feel me? And what happened is, it took you millions of years to adapt to your environment of do's and don'ts, the same way you did in the kitchen. So now you understand the nature of being in the kitchen. Now we go to the bathroom. Has anyone ever put too much soap on their feet or they wash stuff up and they slip in the tub? Or fall asleep underneath the tub? So certain days you won't do in the bathroom also.
Right.
So what happened is, no matter what you do in life, the longer you be around, the more wisdom you get from your experience.
Right.
Because we have been on the planet Earth longer than any other race or species. We know how the planet works and we know nature. And what happened is, with that nature comes what? A doctrine of do's and don't. Do not go and pet the lion. Do not go and play with the hyenas. Do not go and agitate the elephants. Do not go take a swim in the Nile River, because you will get eaten by a crocodile, because you respect nature. You feel me? So these became over time, not just dealing with the animal environment, but things in life, period. You feel me? It became a famine. You say, okay, well, if I store food this much time, I won't have to worry about the bad winters. You hear me? Or whatever, whatever time when you can't get food. If I do this, then I have to worry about that. You feel me? So it took time and time. It might have caused a couple of deaths, you hear me? For you to learn the lesson. But over time, we became masters of nature, where we actually knew how to deal with nature, and we put it in books. But later on, when other races came and saw these do's and don'ts, they called them laws or commandments. You hear me? And it said, God gave us this. You hear me? But the same laws that you find in your Bible, in your Quran, in your Torah, you'll find in a book called the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which the Caucasian call it, but we call it coming forth by day. Because what happened is, when a European came into Egypt and went to the tombs, all they saw were dead pharaohs. When they went to certain type of pyramids, they might have found sarcophagus or nepunks of different dead pharaohs. And said, this must be where the dead lay, and the stuff that was carved on the wall. But we'll call this the Book of the Dead. But they were written in books because everything was on the wall, so you can't call that a book. You feel me? So then when they start translating it into a book form, then they call it the Book of the Dead. And when you go to the Declaration of Innocence before the Notaro of the Tribunal, these are some of the laws. I'm going to just read a few of them. I have not done wrong. I have not robbed. I have not slaved people. I have not reduced measures. I have not stolen an adulterous property. I have not done grain profiteering. I have not disassembled. I have not discussed secrets. I have not fornicated with the fornicators. I have not caused anyone to weep. I have not brought no lawsuit. And I can keep going on. I have not had intercourse with a married woman. Do those laws sound familiar to you?
Yes.
What do they sound like?
Ten Commandments.
The 10 Commandments, but it's the 613 of them. And you find the same 613 in the Torah of the Jews. But the Christians only deal with 10. Now, take this into consideration. The Israelites wrote everything on paper. But who were the first people to write on paper?
Egyptians.
Because they call it papyrus. Paper, papyrus. You something similar in the wording, right? And they took wood, put it together, crushed it up to a certain thickness, and then they started writing on it. But what was they writing it from? Off the walls. And what was the walls made of? Stone. When God gave Moses or Moshe or Thutmose the first the 10 Commandments, what did he put it on? Did he put it on paper or did he put it in stone?
Stone.
Why? Why give a Hebrew stone tablets when they don't write on stone?
Symbolic.
Because this Hebrew wasn't really a Hebrew, he's an Egyptian. Because they say he was raised in the house of Pharaoh, so that means he doesn't speak Hebrew.
Right.
He speaks what? Egyptian. That's why they said Moses was slow of tongue, because he didn't speak the language fluently.
Oh.
Okay. You know what I'm saying?
Now,
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Just very quickly, so when they said Moses had a speech impediment,
No, that's what they said.
it was really because he didn't speak?
Okay, watch this. If I don't speak a language fluently like you do, that's called a speech impediment, right?
That's just what you said.
Exactly. The meaning that he didn't speak
Okay.
his native tongue. According to the Bible, he's supposed to have been a Hebrew raised Egyptian. But he was not raised speaking Hebrew. He was raised speaking Egyptian because he was in Pharaoh's house. So and he was a royal bloodline. Meaning that royal bloodline wouldn't even, they would never speak the language of the slaves according to religious doctrine. You hear me? But they had someone translate for them. What do you say? You translate. You know what I'm saying? Because they're a royal bloodline. Well, it would be beneath them to speak the language of the slave. According to religious doctrine. You hear me? So, and they said illiterate. The same thing they say about Muhammad. But illiterate doesn't mean that you can't talk or you can't read. It means that you're ignorant to something. If I don't know how to speak French, then I'm illiterate to French.
I don't understand.
That means I don't understand. That means I'm ignorant. That means the word ignorant means to ignore. You know what I'm saying? That he doesn't know another language. But they come in and say, oh, he was slow of tongue, or he can't talk, he stuttered. Come on, who told you that? Where you get that from? The God speak to you and told you that? That Moses, why would God let some illiterate dude teach his people? Do that make any sense? Not once, but twice. Muhammad also said was literate. 2 prophets. One over the Torah, one over the Quran. And they both illiterate. That don't make any sense. But it's God is showing how powerful he is. Okay. Show me how really powerful he is. Get somebody with a 189 IQ as opposed to a 20% IQ. You feel me? So what happened is these laws were in Egypt first. And they were plagiarized. You feel me? So in Wu-nuwaupu, our job was to deal with the natural nature of the universe and planet. You hear me? Someone came along and took the natural nature doctrine, right? And made it religious. And said, if you don't follow this, you shall burn in hell forever. If you don't follow this, you shall be stoned to death. If you don't follow this, your head shall be cut off. You feel me?
Yes.
That goes against nature. Because the laws you're talking about, the way you're putting a spin on it, goes against people's nature. You can't tell a Muslim not to wear jalabia if he lives in Saudi Arabia or he lives in a desert environment. You hear me? He can't wear regular clothes like this. It's not suitable for that type of temperature. But you can't tell an Eskimo to wear a Muslim robe if he's a Muslim in Antarctica or Alaska when it's almost below 0 temperatures. Because the clothes that Muhammad were wearing was conducive to that environment. They needed the turban and the long robe to protect them from the elements of sandstorm, because sand will tear your face up. If anybody who work construction understand what I'm talking about. With debris and stuff hit your face, you don't feel it until later on, especially when you're cutting stuff down or sewing something. Later on, when you wash your face off and you put some alcohol or something on your face, you actually feel that stuff going right into your point and you start to be like, ouch, ooh, you know, because you feel like somebody took little needles and was sticking you. If anyone who does construction understand what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? So what happened is, these customs and tradition fits the natural environment of where you live at. It's just that when people start feeling though, I feel like I need more territory, I need to conquer more land, then you start expanding. And when you start expanding, guess what happens? You go into other people's countries, right? Now you're coming to a different culture, right? Because you want their land, because you never use up all your natural resources on your land, and your land is overpopulated, you start migrating out. Now you're going to another country with a different type of nature, because they deal with nature in their environment. You feel me? So now you're going to supplant these people's natural nature with your nature that fits. Like that's like a Hindu trying to go into Saudi Arabia and push Hinduism and Buddhism in Mecca. This is the way the Roman Catholic Church came into Saudi Arabia and pushed Roman Catholicism. You hear me? But you're bringing in two different cultures, two different natures, and you're bringing it to a culture that has nothing to do with the culture. So then when you conquer the people of that land, you make them say that you have to denounce your natural religion, your natural way of life, right? Or your animism, right? And you have to become what I tell you to be. Whatever I am is what the country's going to be. And this is why you find, worldwide, you find different people that do not look what they're practicing. Do you understand what I mean like that? Means if I saw a dark-skinned African guy with big lips and big eyes and say, hey, Aziz, do that look like they would, do that make any sense to you when if I call him Aziz? Why?
He's either African or Arab.
If I call Shaka Zulu Aziz, would you look at me like I'm crazy? You understand what I'm saying?
No.
Because the name doesn't even fit his characteristic. You know what I'm saying? So what happened is that means that you look at this person like, you don't even fit your name. Because you look like a pure African. But this is what happens every day when you go to places like Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, you feel what I'm saying? Tanzania, Algeria, Mali, Nigeria. You feel me? Kenya, Chad, Sudan, Somalia, Ethiopia, Djibouti, Eritrea, Egypt. These are all black regions, right? That have been overpowered by Arabs, Indo-Arabs. And now you got Africans walking around with Islamic names. Same way you see Africans in America walking around with Christian names. And we all have them, or had them. But we've been 400 years removed from our natural culture. Because as an African, you didn't do any of the stuff that you call the American culture. Right? Anybody old enough would know that, would y'all agree that the youth are crazy?
Oh, yes.
Now, why would you say that?
Because it seems like after every generation they get more, I would say, out of tune with like when I was raised.
Say it again, say that one time. Like how what?
Like I was raised.
What year was you raised?
I was born in '68.
Okay, that means that the 70s was your teenage years.
Right.
That's the year that you had your fun. It was, but you know what? In the 70s, we still had a certain amount of morality and discipline.
Right.
And we still had a black family. You know what I mean? So the question is that as a generation, they start changing. Changing into what?
I don't know what they're changing into, but they're getting a little more violent.
Okay,
They're getting a little more against who they are, because now even the schools and stuff teaching them to be like multicultural and accept this and accept that.
There's no such thing as multicultural. And even people say the Nuwaubians are multicultural. No, we're not. Well, y'all keep changing your religions. Your school. Yeah, so? Did you ever ask us why we did it? We were Muslims at one. First we were Africans. We started making six. People didn't want that. So we became Muslims because people that's what they wanted at the time, right? Then we became Hebrews. Then we became Christians. Then we became Moors, Cowboys and Indians, Masons, Sufis. You feel me? And you know what? Ever ask a question, Dr. Euro, why do you keep changing? Because Dr. York was trying to show you that each of our people were put under a different spell in all these different religions. Meaning you got black Masons, black Muslims, black Christians, black Jews. Why you put the word black on it? When I say African, do I have to put black on African? Why?
I have a question, when you say African now, that country, they would call something else.
It was called Fatadun, Tamaray, Akibalan. I mean, they had different names for Kemet Kush.
Okay, so this guy, Civico Africano, he came over there during the Punic Wars, and he named that country Africa.
Yeah.
But what was it called, before him? We talk about we African American. We have been everything.
Yeah, but the only reason why I'm saying African American because you don't speak Nuwaubic. So if I say Nuwaupu, you say, well, what is that? Well, that's actually the name of the land at one time. It was called Nubia. You hear me? But you don't speak that language, so I can give you what you know. So if I go to an average person, hey, you're African, they understand what I'm saying. But I say you're Nuwaubian, they say, what is that? Because you got to remember that before Africanus or whatever changed their name, actually they come from Africa, they came from the Arabs. Because they came from the word Africa, which means to separate and divide. Because this is still on display trade when they came in and took over certain portions of Africa and they started enslaving the indigenous people of Africa. And if you look at us now, we are really truly African by the definition. We separate and we're divided. You feel what I'm saying? Until we come back together again, this is how we're going to do it. But before I switch it over, I'm going to give one last point. Is that we got different, the master teacher, no one ever asked the master teacher why he kept switching. He switched schools because we had to master these schools so we could be able to talk to each of our people who were trapped in these schools. The people say, well, you take doctrine from this doctrine, and everybody quotes on it. Yes, he does. Because it was ours anyway. Muslim, you took stuff from us, you stole it out of Egypt. And we're taking it back. We're going to your Qur'ans and we're going to each of your surahs and your verses and we're taking out what you took from Egypt. We're taking prayer back from you, you stole that from us. Muhammad did not get injunction for 5 salats or 7 salats because when you go to ancient Egypt and look on the walls, each position of salat you can find on the walls of Egypt and you can find statues showing each position. Go inside the Torah, or your dress code, the stuff your pastor, all that stuff you're doing, we're taking that back too. You took our stuff and we want it back. Christians, all the different stuff you got in there too, we're taking that also. Muslims, Masons, Sufis, Shriners, Illuminati, I can keep going on and on. Native American Indian, you all took from Egypt, which is the actual source. So what we're doing is we're taking it back. Our master teacher, Papa Bab Nun, is the master teacher of all these different schools. You hear me? Because he know that each and every last one of these schools, someone took a piece of this. I'm gonna take this. Then I get off the wall. I'm gonna take everything off the wall I need, right? And I'm gonna take this back to Rome. And I'm gonna create this. We're taking that little piece back. It's ours. We want it back. You feel me? We're taking that back too. Oh, shrine, more scientific nation shrine, we're taking that back also. So it all go back to Egypt. And you can have it again, but you're gonna have to have it in this form, the Book of the Dead, the Gold Book, the Black Book, the Second Records of Atum Ray. You put it on the camera. Second Records of Atum Ray, Second Records of Tamaray, Coming Forth by Day, which is known as the Book of the Dead. The Holy Tablets with the whole Sumerian doctrine, we're taking it all back. It's ours anyway. It was always ours. We just want it back. And when you master the schools of religion, then you go back to the impact, which is ancient Egypt. In the beginning, it shall be in the end. This is where they got that from, also the scriptures. And with that, I'd like to pass the mic over to my brother, Servetus Sihitep Khalid.
That's it. Before we jump into the next questions, I want to make sure I address the thing that you were talking about Scipio Africanus, right?
Yeah.
As far as the information that you got, or information, excuse me, that you're talking about, you getting that from Hidden Colors? You saw Hidden Colors?
Yeah, I started, I didn't get that. This is a book on I think it's the Battle of Karnak.
Mm-hmm.
and they talk about, the war that Scipio, I think he was fighting Hannibal.
Okay.
And, at that time, Hannibal didn't have the Moors on his side then, and he lost the war with him. So he named that continent Africa, after his time.
It wasn't him to explain what happened, whoever comes to the country, the sovereign at that time, would name that country after the one that come before them. So it wasn't Scipio that named it, it was whoever his sovereign was named it after Scipio.
And the thing about it, this is one of the biggest things that happens. Because when I was watching Hidden Colors, don't get me wrong, I like Hidden Colors. You know what I'm saying? I like the whole setup. It's necessary for us to be able to see how you'll have a documentary set up in a way to where you have specialists speak on different aspects of things dealing with us as a people. I mean, we turn around and we look at the History Channel, we see, you know, them doing that all the time. We look at Science Channel, you see them doing it, dealing with their topics. So that's great. I love the whole setup. But when we come to dealing with right knowledge and we're dealing with facts, we have to look and say, okay, hold on a moment, something isn't right. Because when you're dealing with this guy, Scipio, right? Scipio ended up taking on that attribute Africanus after the fact of him taking over this particular land as a gentleman, right? So he took on the attribute of Africanus. That wasn't what was there as a part of his name at first. This isn't something that was new. You had different people who ended up coming into Africa who ended up taking on Africanus as an attribute. Also, when you start finding particular bodies, like for instance in 1924 when they found a body that they found to be 2.5 million years old, they called it Australopithecus africanus, right? Africanus is a Latin term that they ended up using to name the geographic region themselves, right? But the first place that this actually was used was, as the brother was explaining, is by the Arabs inside of the language of Arabic, and the word was faraka, meaning to separate or divide. So when they were talking about the region, they call it Africa, which means the continent being separated and divided. But back to the whole Scipio Africanus thing so that we can understand something. If you're saying that Africa got its name from a person who didn't first have this as an attribute, but once they took over this region, then they took on that attribute, we're actually taking on backwards thinking at that point. He takes on Africanus after overcoming a region, right? It wasn't Africanus before that. So it's not possible for you to name the entire continent after this person who got this attribute after taking over a particular geographical area. So there's misinformation inside of that part that has to be, cleared up.
Well, maybe I misinterpreted my.
No, don't get me wrong. The reason why I say that is because that's why I asked you a question about Hidden Colors. Because on Hidden Colors, I actually saw that information being put out by way of that documentary as well. And I've had to address that a few times before. So that's why I asked you that question first. Because we have to make sure we address it correctly and we just ask a question. Okay, if he takes on the attribute of Africanus, which in Latin means Africa, dealing with this region, and he was given this attribute after taking over this region because he won this region in war, right? How can the continent be named after he came and took over this region? You see what I'm saying? He took on the title with his taking over the region. So you can't say that he actually received the name and the region got its name when it's Latin, which was, he's a Roman general. This is inside of the Latin language, Africanus, which is talking about this place. He was given Africanus as he took over Africa, or Africanus. You see what I'm saying? So it's like if he took over the region in Latin, because he's a Roman general, they speak Latin, Africanus is Latin, talking about the region, but it's also their spin-off of the Arabic language where they already call it Africa, because that's all they do in language. With their language being that it's not their original language, they just take bits and pieces and they use it over and over. We see that done now, today. But another thing that our master teacher explained is when we use this particular term, when we talk about it and we say Africa, we say Afaf Reyeka. Like he said earlier, when you're dealing with the language of Nuwaupu, when you say Afaf Reyeka, you're talking about of the spirit of the sun or children of the sun. So then you find out that within our language, which goes before the Arabs even started splitting up, taking from us, and then putting their own definitions on our words, You see, they said, okay, this means separated divide, because that was their plan. And that's what's been done. That's why we have over 50 countries now when you're talking about this continent. But our names for this place was not just that continent that you see now. When you say children of the sun, you're not just talking about that particular they're speaking about now. When you say Pt.1, you're not just talking about that continent that you're speaking about now. When we say Tamare, the land of water, the land, water, and sun, you're not just talking about that continent right now. We're talking about the entire planet. So those original names weren't only that area, but was also the entire planet. Because being that we are the first beings here. Just to clear that up.
I got the clarification from too.
Okay, good to go.
I have one more thing. Earlier he was saying about we nature and nature. So the first thing that came to my mind is that same thing like microcosm and microcosm. Like everything that's out there is in us. All the elements that is out there is us.
That's true. That's true. Inside of a Patriarch called, excuse me for turning my back to you,
What's that word against micro what?
microcosm and macrocosm.
Macro.
Cosm, like for cosmos. As our master teacher explained, when each one of us is a universe, you're the center of your own universe, right? And we all exist within an omniverse, right? So, therefore, as above, so below, as they say, right? Everything that is outside of you is also inside of you as a universe. Just like when you look at a galaxy, you can look at a galaxy, and then when you look smaller down into cells, down into atoms, you see it's made up the same way. You see what I'm saying? Because we're governed by the same laws when you're talking about physicality, all these things being physical. You understand they're governed by the same laws. So therefore, when you're seeing it, and when we know that ultimately we're really dealing in energy anyway. You follow? But if that's what you're asking, then the answer is yes, that is the case. But go ahead with the remainder of the question.
That's the first thing that came to my mind when he was explaining to her about that he said we nature. And the first thing in my mind was, okay, the same thing is microcosm, macrocosm.
Well, then I have to say this. With him saying the nature of nature, right? That's not necessarily the same thing as saying microcosm and macrocosm insofar as when you're dealing with nature, nature has a nature itself, right? And then there are different aspects of nature, right? Like for instance, as we're dealing with ether, for instance, if you're dealing with 9 ether as opposed to 6 ether, these are opposing forces within nature, right? So then these things that are within nature as a whole, they have opposing natures within them.
Okay. When you talk about ether, because
Hold on, before we go there, because we want to make sure that we're clear on the nature before we jump into
right, because you lost me when you get to talking about ether.
Okay.
Because at this point, I'm thinking like of like a spiritual nature. You know what I'm saying? Not the physical, like the body.
Good to go. All right. So that takes us back to what we were talking about a moment ago.
Okay.
Our master teacher explained that there was going to have to come a point to where our definition of spiritual changes. You understand? So let me ask you, what does spiritual mean to you? As you're saying that, because I need to be able to understand your question, right? Okay, so you're saying you're thinking spiritual. So what does spiritual mean to you?
Spiritual meaning to me, as in, I know that I'm not this body. You know what I'm saying? I like you said earlier, I'm energy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm just slowed down energy up into a physical form. That's when it comes to the flesh and all that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because when the flesh falls, I know, I'm not the flesh.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 'cause I'm going to go somewhere else to the main energy.
Okay.
Or the all of, where I came from.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I mean by spiritual, not the spooky like,
I got you. So where does spiritual begin?
The spiritual begin, like, to me, like, this just my
I got you.
understanding.
Like I said, I'm trying to understand where you are so we can go ahead and reach that.
Okay, so like when the creator of the all, came across the primordial waters, to me, the primordial water was that the energy that's in space, not no physical H2O water. So everything was just energy from the beginning, but then when the all, want to create matter, if you will, start energy down and come into the physical form or whatever, that's where I'm at with it.
Okay, I understand. All right, so one of the ways that our master teachers helped us to be able to get a better understanding of what spiritual is for us to first ask the question, what physical is, and then answer that. Because we understand that physical, as we perceive it, being that we're existing on this particular plane right now, that's relative to what we see right now, right? Like this book, you consider it to be physical, right? All right, so dealing with physics, right, we would say that the smallest things that make up matter or material would be atoms, right? So then we end up saying that the smallest atom, as they say, is hydrogen. So then that becomes the smallest unit of measurement of material, or the smallest unit of sum. So that's where something begins, right? But then, being that before there was knowledge of subatomic particles, right? They thought that the atom was the smallest particle of existence or material, right? Then you find out that the atom itself is made up of smaller particles, right? But these smaller particles are below or sub, right, the atom itself, because it makes the atom. So then you have your protons, you have your neutrons, your electrons, right? But then each one of those things themselves is also made up of smaller particles, right? Which we have as the biaps, your Z's, your Zills, your quarks, right? So if physicality begins at the smallest particle of material, or sum, meaning that it sums up to something, this is where something begins, then that means that the hydrogen atom is where something begins, right? But it itself is made up of smaller things, right? So it's also energy, because it's conglomerated energy to make that. So it's still energy, because it's still vibrating everything else. It's got all these different parts that's moving. So it's still energy. It's like your physical cells, your physical makeup is still energy too. Like you said, it's slowed down or what have you, to be perceived on this level of existence or what have you. But that's still energy as well. So then when we look at that, we understand that that's spirit too, as far as energy is concerned. But then when we get past physical on the other side of that hydrogen atom, that's where we say that the spiritual begins for us to relate to it. You understand what I'm saying? So now you're on the other side of hydrogen. And that's where you're looking at your spirit realm, if you would. Like you said, it's all energy. So that's where we end up saying, okay, so this is where spiritual begins. Now this is what's interesting as we're talking about nature of nature. Each one of these things has its own nature inside of it. Like, for instance, protons have a nature. They operate in a certain way. Electrons have a nature. They operate the same in a certain way. So each one of these things has its own nature within the whole of nature. So when we're talking about nature of nature, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's the same as microcosm and macrocosm. With what he's saying, you say it has its own behaviors within the whole, because each plays its part within all. You understand? Does that make sense? Is that clear? I see your face. You look like it.
Yeah, because I'm still, you know,
Riding gears. Let's get it.
I still got this macrocosm, macro thing going on, because it's like everything that's going on, you know, it's still, like you said, it's following the same laws. Everything got its own thing to do, like the matrix, you know, every little thing got its own thing to do. To me, it's like what's out there, doing what's out there, the same thing that we're doing here, but I don't know.
that becomes what we strive towards understanding, which really boils down to when you ask the question, you said, where do you start? Right? You start where you are. That's the only place you can start. You see what I'm saying? You start from your point. And then from that point, your journey begins. Like the Master Teacher explained to us, your quest begins with your question. You see what I'm saying? So the thing is, when you're coming to question and answer class, we wouldn't know which direction to be able to go as far as information until the person asks the question. Then when that question is sparks the direction that we're going to go, that's the way that our master teachers always taught us. Still teaches us to this day. We ask the question. A lot of times, our questions is what took us into those other schools. So that we would be able to get a full understanding of the fallacies by way of religion. Because he came giving us Wu-nuwaup originally, but we weren't prepared. We weren't ready for it. We wanted to ask him about Jesus. We wanted to ask him about Muhammad. You know what I'm saying? We wanted to ask him about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We want to know about that. But when he first came, the first thing he was saying, 67 and 70, he was talking about get from behind the nine ball and Bible interpretations and explanations. He was going straight into Wu-nuwaup then. We just couldn't handle it at the time. Because he had to go, he has a job. And his job is to answer our questions. So our questions took us to the schools that we had to go through. If that makes sense.
They do.
You might ask a question, sis, I'm sorry.
So where do I start? So I was looking at actual facts.
Okay.
So if I'm thinking starting from 1.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm interested in 18, would I start at 18?
You talking about as far as actual fact?
Yes.
Yeah. Because the way that the master teacher wrote the books, we never followed the books in a chronological
It's not
order.
chronological.
No, it's not written in chronological order like that. As diligent students, what our job is to do is as they come, you study each one of them, because it's like, he said we're taking a long journey on a short path. He said what that means is we're going to amass a lot of information in a short amount of time, right? So he'll be talking about this here, he'll be talking about this here, right? This book comes out today, you're reading and you're talking about this, you're in right fields. Then you get a book come out tomorrow and you're reading all the way in left field and you don't necessarily understand how they connect, right? But then as you start reading more and more, what will happen is different books are connected to that, and it'll connect to that, and it'll connect to that. Then you see that they all are interconnected, because Wu-nuwaup, it covers all. It's the equalizer for all. Because when you start talking about us, as far as our culture is concerned, as a people, our culture has our answers for us, the way we see it, on all levels. You understand? But where you are is where you're supposed to be, number one. That's what the master teachers always taught. Where you are is where you're supposed to be. Like, you wouldn't want to ask the question, okay, what do I do? Like, somebody asked a question before, what do I do about the fact that I wasn't here to receive information 20 years ago as far as these schools and all of that? And he explained, he said it doesn't matter whether you've been here for 20 years or for 20 minutes. You see what I'm saying? He said, if you came, when you came is when you were supposed to be here. So then, like you said, if you're in there and you're looking at actual fact number 18, which is tone, sound, DNA, molecules, vibrational frequencies, right? Then if that's what you're gravitating towards right then, you're the center of your universe. You know what it is that you want. So then you get that. Because you definitely need that information. You're gonna need all the information in it. But you're walking on your own journey. You don't have to go look for book 1. And as a matter of fact, like you said, with the point that we're in right now, we need to be more gravitated towards Hatarat and the actual facts. And you definitely want to make sure that, like my brother, the extraterrestrial, this is important too. I was just talking to a brother before I got here, because it kind of gives a good foundation of where we are at this moment. My brother, the extraterrestrial, should be back there as well.
Is it?
Yeah.
Hey,
Go ahead, bro.
go ahead, brother.
Uh,
Can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you. The mic's not working right now, so you know.
I really don't have any Caucasian friends like that. But if I want to, discuss Wu-nuwaup with them, I really wouldn't have anything positive. If they want to know, what we thought about them, I really wouldn't have anything positive to say for them to want to feel like Nuwaubians are positive. Because I really don't have, because reading the doctrine, if I go to work and I try to explain the doctrine on their point of view, I really don't have anything positive to say about it.
Well, see, the thing is, we don't hate.
Right.
One. Right? And back to the whole nature thing. We understand these beings in nature. One of the things that I don't know if y'all go on Wu-nuwaup.com a lot and check out the classes, but there's a class that started from around April 16th of this year called Inclination. The master was teaching on inclination. talking about the nature based on the DNA, based on the genetics of these beings, then what happens is, because of the genetics, right, they have different beings that actually can speak to them because they're connected genetically. So there are more things that they're more inclined to do because it's within their nature to do, right? What our job for ourselves is to do is to be able to understand the nature of different beings. We don't have to hate beings, but we have to understand their nature in order to be able to preserve ourselves, right? For instance, not all snakes are poisonous, right? But all snakes are snakes, right? So, with me having that knowledge, I can now make a conscious decision that I wouldn't stick my hand inside of a bag filled with snakes, even though I know that not all of them are poisonous.
Gotcha.
You see what I'm saying? So I decide now, okay, I'm not going to stick my hand in the bag, because even though all snakes aren't poisonous, all snakes are snakes. And that would be me risking, my own, health over that. So that's why, understanding the nature of these beings, we can decide, okay, how we deal with them. Now, does that mean that you're not going to have some Caucasoids that's going to come into this doctrine and that's going to actually be able to make it? Of course you're going to have Caucasoids that's going to make it, as the master teacher explained. He said you're going to have some Caucasians that's going to be on the craft sitting next to you if you make it. But what has to happen is they have a bullet. They got to bite down on a bullet that they're going to have to swallow too, because they're going to have to deal with who they are.
That's right.
That's what you have to deal with. You have to deal with who you are. As the master teacher explained, we've been mixed up so much. So we got to be able to understand our own voice, to understand who the divine in us is, because we've been mixed up with them too. See? So the thing is, it's enough for you battling with the personalities within yourself. And you don't necessarily have to go outside of yourself to go and battle with, this Caucasoid over here, but you have Wu-nuwaup, which gives you an understanding of the nature of this being. So you say, okay, so I understand the nature of this being. I'm not going to run and spend too much time with it. Right? I can recall being on the job back in 2007, 2008, and I was reading the beginning scroll, right? And this white lady was talking to me or whatever, and we was working customer service. And she asked me some questions or whatever, and I just explained to her. I said, well, the reality is I really don't trust white people, and she wanted to strike a conversation with me or whatever. So I said, all right, because I was kind of in my rah-rah at that moment too, like, you're a devil, blah, 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 But I explained to her, I said, the reality is, what reason do I have to trust you? I have every reason to distrust you more than trust you. So it's not that I hate you, right? But I don't feel like it would be in my best interest to waste time with you right now. You understand? And she says to me, she said, you know what? I understand. She said, because if what had been done to you was done to me, I wouldn't trust you either.
She said
right? Yeah, she said that. Wow. I had another situation where I had a white dude, as we was propagating, he came to our table, and he heard, I'm from South Carolina. I'm from the South. So, you know what I'm saying? With me being from the South, it's always a big thing to where whenever white people come around, you got, young black people talking, white people come around, we start whispering, We don't do that. I used to get to the point where it'd be like, you know what, man, bump that. When a white person comes to my table, I'm gonna talk louder, because I want them to hear, not so much for them, and not so much for me, but for the young people standing around me to be able to recognize it's time out for that fear, So I said, certain things or whatever, and this white guy asked a question. He said, well, if that's the case, then who am I to you? And I asked him, I said, do you really want me to answer that? And then he said, yes. And then I said, well, you're the devil. Right? But I wasn't trying to be funny. I answered the question. I said, you are the devil. And he said, oh, that's not fair. Then I said to him, I said, so you want for me to listen to you telling me about what's not fair? When you talk about what your people have done to my people, let's just talk about it a little bit. So your people did this, 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 this. Look at your own history books. This, and as we start running it down, he said, you know what? I can see that. And he walked off. And it blew their mind right here. But like the master said, when you're dealing with the devil, you shine a light on him. And that's gonna stop. That's gonna freeze him up. You see what I'm saying? You just shine truth right on him and it's gonna freeze him up. Now, at that point, he could have asked the question, well, can you tell me more about who I am? Because I want to know. You know what I'm saying? That could be the case. And you got people like the master said, you got causes that's gonna make it. They're just gonna have a pill that they're gonna have to swallow because they gotta recognize who they are, where they're from, why they were drafted, and all of that. And like he explained, if you got a Caucasoid female and then she ties into these genetics, right? That puts her in a position to be able to ascend. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, I better focus on make sure I make it. You know what I'm saying? Because please know, when it comes down to some of these white people, they trying to live, man.
Yeah.
For real, you see white people out here riding bikes more than you see brothers and sisters riding bikes all day.
That's right.
You see them in the gym. As soon as you hear something about to flood out somewhere, some cracker with money is spending money to go and buy some land on Mount Kilimanjaro or something. So they'll be able to live straight up. They putting money where their mouth at. They trying to survive. And so if they recognize the master for who he is, and then they recognize him as being the only salvation, guess what? They'll make it. I ain't got nothing to do with that. Do I trust them when I'm around them? I still can't, because it's still something to me. It's like, but do I hate them? No. So, I'm not out looking for no, I guess I ain't on the Drake no new friends thing or whatever, but this is not that deep. We got so much to work on. I got a wife, I got 4 children home, we gotta make it here. We gotta do what we gotta do here. I have no time to worry about what they're doing. If you want to find out what's going on, you gotta come here. Come sit down in these, we'll tell you who you are based on what he told us, if you sit in these chairs. I'm not going out there to propagate, I'm not propagating in the suburbs. You feel me? Go
I
ahead.
got another question. You know the pound of shad, right? You know the first 2 lines of the pound of shad.
Okay.
The old one and the new one, I'm the pound of all expanding. Or
Uh-huh.
I asked the person, I said, can a white person be a Nuwaubian? Because if they are truly Nuwaubian, when they say the pound of shad, when they say the anthem, if they say all is in me, that means non-ether is in them too. Because all is. So non-ether exists within all. So that means all non-ether could be in them too. And that's why I got confused and kind of like, they really can't be a Nuwaubian. Or they really, because they really can't say that.
All right, so with that question, I'm going to go ahead and hand the class over to my good brother, Wu-Sabat Emre Atumeye.
All right.
He will come and address that.
Non-ether is a combination of all existing gases. But other gases exist within non-ether. When you look at Holy Tablets, chapter 1, right? And you gotta remember, when non-ether dies, it becomes what?
60.
The 60 that dies, it becomes what?
Ghost.
This is how the Caucasian comes about. They're created from the devil, a non-ether. This thing is the book called Man from Planet, it's called entropy.
Right.
You heard that? That's how the universe works. When it peaks at its highest peak, that's when the non-ether is alive. And when it peaks to a certain point, it has to come down. When it comes down, that means the universe has to rest. That's against existence how and why, am I corrected? You know what I'm saying? And when the universe rested, okay, builds its energy back up, you call it the age of death. When it's resting, you call it the moon cycle. When it's at its peak, it's the sun cycle. Man from Planet actually goes into it scientifically in detail. But what happened is, when you said the Caucasian got non-ether in them, no, they don't. Because they represent the death of non-ether. But everything exists within Pa, which is non-ether. You feel what I'm saying? But within non-ether, you have different lesser gases. You understand what I'm saying? So, when you say the Caucasian can't be Nuwaubian, that's not what the master teacher said. He said you be a Nuwaubian by your commitment.
Right.
See, what happened is people get so caught up in it, because I'm black, I automatically fit. No, it's the mind state. Now the Caucasians that join up, because we do have Caucasian members, you know that, right?
Yeah.
You saying? As long as the Caucasian understands this doctrine and accepts this doctrine, they can be part of Wu-nuwaup.
So could they be a true Nuwaubian genetically? Or
When you say true Nuwaubian genetic, what you mean?
I mean,
Do
like,
you know what a Nuwaubian is?
yeah, Nuwaubian,
The message teacher never gave us a definition for
wait,
it.
he never gave us a
So
definition of
that
Wapu.
only the master teacher can break it down. What
true.
a Nuwaubian is, because, you know, the title.
Yeah.
You saying, and the reason why the master teacher has never gave it to us, because once we give it to them, then they want to change the definition. That's why they haven't changed it yet. That's
Yeah.
why they haven't been able to define it, because we never gave them the meaning to it. You know, the Caucasian does this all the time. Come to Africa, what does that mean? Oh, that means this. Okay, it means that. Oh, what does it mean? It means this. Well, I'm gonna say it means that. They do this all day. The reason why they can't do that with the Nuwaubian because they don't have a reference point to do it. They can say it can mean anything they want, but they're not gonna do that because they put their foot in their mouth.
That's right.
And one thing Caucasians do not like is to be proven wrong. This is why a lot of stuff that they pushed years ago, the world is flat. They haven't came back and apologized to all the people they murdered and killed and burnt the state that said the world was round. But the Christians, these religious organizations murdered these people and never said, well, we were wrong. You feel me? Or the ancient Egyptians were not the first people on planet Earth. Or the Sumerians. But they already put out so many textbooks saying these are facts. And now they're not going to go back and clean up the stuff. At one time they said we came from apes. Now they're going to find out that they're the ones who came from primates or apes. And that we came from more like a reptilian or aquatic being that came out of the water. But they don't want to go back and say, well, we made a mistake. They're not going to do this.
They never say that.
You saying? So you also got to understand that these are still our children. Because it still came out of us.
That's right. Oh, good
You
point.
do listen to you understand what I'm
I
saying?
do.
So I don't hate them. How can you hate something if you know their nature?
That's right.
But people who hate is because they don't understand and they fear the unknown. The reason why the Caucasians don't like us is that because we can't save them.
That's right.
Because they don't have the means to lead from this realm to the next existence or dimension of, you know what I'm saying? This is why the Caucasian woman, like I mentioned in so many updates, want to mix in with the African man so she can be able to make that transition. The Caucasian, he vibrates on 5 ether. The white woman vibrates on 6. The Oriental vibrates on 7, the Hindu on 8, and we on 9. You feel me? So any other being, 7, 8, 9 can actually translate to another dimension. The Caucasian woman can, but she can only do it if she get a boost. This is why all your entertainers are dating all these white girls.
That's right.
Because they're pushing it. You know what I'm saying? These white girls are throwing themselves on these rappers and these athletes because they know what they're doing. I'm trying to get saved. You can do whatever you want to be. I make it to the other side. But in order for them to do that, this black man had to sacrifice himself, right?
Yeah.
So she can make it. So he loses his soul, which is his key to the doorway to a higher existence, and she gets that pass. The Caucasian can't, no matter what he makes a male or female, he can't ascend because he don't have enough juice or enough ethers or enough soul to make it to the other side. And this is why he hates you. At one time he did,
That's right.
but he spent too much time in the Caucasus Mountains mixing in with the animals and lost his soul.
Bestiality.
Yes, it is.
This is,
So don't be too hard on him. So don't trust him either. Same way you can't trust your own. Reason why, do you trust black people?
Man,
Just keep it real. Keep it real. Do you trust black
I
people?
don't trust the
No.
niggas.
Okay. Well, how does a nigga look?
I'm just saying, the one that I, yeah.
No, when you say nigga, how does a nigga look? Oh, pants hanging down?
Well, they don't care.
That's not a nigga.
Oh, my definition.
No, but listen, I'm being honest with you, that's not a nigga though. Because that person's just confused. You gotta understand, this could be your son that you raised with morals and respect, and he just happened to be copping the bag. He may wear locks because Wayne wear locks. He may have his pants hanging down because Pharrell or Kanye got their pants hanging down. Doesn't make him a bad person. It's just that you're caught up in the trend. So you understand that hip hop has a look, and each year they come up with a new look. So you can't call that a nigger was a nigger look. But it's not mentally a nigger. 'Cause that nigger can have a suit and tie on and talk real proper
True,
and sell your whole family out.
true,
Straight
true.
That's why we have a book called Are There Black Devils? I'm a nigger. Because I know what the word nigger means. It means someone is black, from the word Nagaru. The Caucasian took the word nigger and made it into something ignorant.
Exactly.
He took a word that, what did that mean? Oh, that means black. Oh, I'm gonna say ignorant. See, this is why you can't give them nothing, you can't give them nothing no more. They like to take your words that you teach them and change the whole definition around.
Yep.
And now you say, oh, this nigga's a nigga. Okay, he's not a nigga, he's proper. This is the guy that says, I lost all my money to you. I have nowhere to stay. And he'll say, well, don't take it personal.